Family photo albums are usually pretty quiet. They sit on shelves or in boxes, gathering dust, mostly just there to confirm memories we think we already have. But this story starts with one of those albums, and it's anything but quiet. It all began in 2019. A 38-year-old software technician named Daniel Morris is helping his parents clean out their house. His dad had just retired, and it was time to sort through a lifetime of stuff. Daniel is the kind of person who likes order. He's methodical. He likes things labeled and dated. So when he found an old photo album, it wasn't an emotional moment. It was just another item to organize. The album belonged to his mother. Inside were the usual family snapshots you'd expect. Birthday parties, road trips, backyard barbecues. The pictures were all from the late 80s and early 90s. Daniel sat on the floor, casually flipping through the pages. At first, it was all very familiar, very normal. Then, he stopped. One photograph caught his eye. It showed his mother, Elaine, back when she was around 27. She was standing in the sun, smiling, squinting a little. She wore a faded denim jacket over a pale yellow shirt, her shoulder-length hair blowing in the wind. Behind her was a street. Daniel didn't recognize it, but that wasn't weird. Who remembers every street from 30 years ago? But the longer he looked, the stranger it got. Behind his mother stood a row of identical buildings. They were 3 stories high, made of light-colored concrete, with narrow balconies. What really stood out was a distinctive blue stripe running horizontally across the front of each building. Daniel's blood ran cold. He knew those buildings. He drove past them every single day on his way to work. They were part of a residential development called Riverton Heights. And Riverton Heights wasn't officially completed until 2008. He looked at the date handwritten below the photo, 1991. His first thought was that the date must be wrong. It happens. People mislabel things. He turned the page to check the next photo. It was taken on the same day. His mom was wearing the same clothes, just at a different angle. And those impossible buildings were still there, clear as day. He flipped again. Another photo, same spot, but this time his father was in the picture. The evidence was piling up. A few days later, Daniel showed the photos to his mother, Elaine. Now, 65 Elaine is a calm woman, very careful with her words. She doesn't jump to conclusions. If she can't remember something, she'll tell you straight up. She studied the photograph for a long time. That was taken on a Sunday, she said finally. I remember because your father hated driving on Sundays. Daniel asked her where they were. Elaine paused. I don't know, she admitted. Somewhere outside the city, or maybe near it. That's when Daniel dropped the bombshell. He told her the buildings in the background weren't built until 2008. Elaine just smiled politely. That little smile people give you when they think you've got a minor detail wrong. That can't be right, she said calmly. I remember standing there. Daniel pressed her. What did she remember? Elaine's memory was vivid. She described the weather, the feel of the light, the wind. She even described leaning back and feeling the warmth of the concrete building under her hand. Then she mentioned the blue stripe. She stopped talking when Daniel told her that specific blue stripe was a signature design feature added by the architects years after the photo was supposedly taken. Elaine didn't argue. She just stared at the picture, her certainty slowly replaced by confusion. Daniel knew he had to dig deeper. He went back to the source, checking the original photo negatives. He looked at the film stock they were printed on, even finding the faint stamp from the processing lab on the edge of the photos. Every single detail pointed to the early 1990s. There was no sign of digital manipulation, no evidence of them being modern reprints. The photos were authentic. So, he went the other way. He took the photos and compared the background with current images of Riverton Heights. It was an exact match. The proportions, the spacing between the buildings, every detail was perfect. He even found tiny, specific imperfections, a chipped corner on one building, a slightly misaligned balcony railing that appeared in both the old photo and the modern building. This wasn't just a similar-looking place. It was the exact same place. Still trying to find a rational explanation, Daniel showed the photos to his younger sister, Laura. She's a 34-year-old graphic designer, naturally skeptical and sharp as a tack. When he explained the situation, she laughed at first, Then she looked at the photos, and the laughter died in her throat. She recognized the buildings instantly, just like Daniel had. But then, her eyes widened. She saw something else. Elia, tucked away at the very edge of the frame in one of the photos, was a small convenience store with a red awning. Laura knew that store. But here is the thing. That store officially opened its doors in 2012. Before Laura could even process that, she blurted out, "I remember buying candy there when I was a kid." She immediately froze. The words hung in the air. She shook her head. "No," she said, correcting herself. That doesn't make any sense." She looked back at the photo. Tanat, Danielle, her usual confidence completely gone. The Maurice family was left with an album that defied logic. A collection of photos that were verifiably from the early 1990s, yet showed a location that wouldn't exist for another 15 to 20 years. And stranger still, 2 members of the family had fragments of memories the feel of a warm wall, the taste of candy from a corner store that were just as impossible as the photograph itself. It was a paradox, printed on glossy paper, tucked away in a quiet family album that now held a very loud secret. What do you think's going on here? Is it a glitch in memory, or a glitch in time itself? Let me know your theories in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this mystery, be sure to subscribe for more stories that challenge what we think we know. Daniel started to look for answers outside his family. He reached out to a man named Michael Turner, a 52-year-old city planning archivist. Michael was the kind of person who wore wireframe glasses, dressed conservatively, and spoke in these really precise, almost technical sentences. When Daniel showed him the photos, Michael examined them with intense focus. He then pulled out the official records for Riverton Heights. The documents were clear and unambiguous, according to every official map, permit, and aerial image. The town of Riverton Heights simply did not exist before 2008. The land was completely undeveloped. There were no roads, no utilities, no buildings, nothing. Michael showed Daniel map after map, document after document. Everything in the city's archives told the same story. Everything aligned perfectly. Everything, that is, except for the photos Daniel held in his hands. But Michael didn't accuse Daniel of faking the pictures. He didn't dismiss him as a prankster. Instead, he just got very quiet. He stared at the photos, then at the official maps, and back again. After a long silence, he said something that Daniel found completely unexpected. "These photos," he said slowly, "are inconvenient." Daniel was confused and asked him what he meant by that. Michael explained that city records, and history itself, operate on a fundamental assumption of continuity, that the past is a fixed, stable thing we can document and rely on. These images, he said, disrupted that assumption, not because they proved something wild or impossible, but because they fit into the present-day reality of Riverton Heights asterisk. Too well asterisk. They looked too real, too natural. It was their perfect, mundane quality that made them so unsettling. Armed with this strange new perspective, Daniel drove back to Riverton Heights, the photos resting on the passenger seat. He went back to the exact spot where he believed the pictures were taken all those years ago. He held up the old photograph of his family, lining it up with the real-world view in front of him. He matched the angles of the houses, the curve of the street, the position of the trees. He even waited for the sunlight to hit at the same angle as it did in the picture, and the alignment was exact. It was perfect. As he stood there, lost in this moment, life in Riverton Heights just carried on around him. People walked their dogs. Parents pushed strollers. Cars drove past, their drivers oblivious. Nobody noticed the man standing on the sidewalk, holding a photograph that shouldn't exist. In that moment, Daniel felt something he couldn't quite name. It wasn't fear, and it wasn't excitement. It was a subtle but profound unease, a chilling sensation. It felt as if he was standing in a place that somehow remembered him, even though he knew for a fact he had never been there before. Back home, something had started to shift in his family's perception of the photos as well. Elaine, his mother, began to change the way she talked about them. At first, she was adamant that they were real, that her memory was solid. But as the days went on, she started to express doubt. She'd say things like, well, maybe I'm mistaken, or perhaps it was a different town that just looked similar. Then, her uncertainty grew. I'm just not sure anymore, she'd admit, her voice trailing off. One evening, as they were sitting in the living room, she said something quietly, almost in a whisper. I don't like looking at them now. Daniel asked her why. She struggled to find the words explaining that when she looked at the photos, she felt a memory trying to form in her mind, a ghost of a feeling, but it would always slip away before she could grasp it. It was like trying to remember the details of a dream right after waking up. The most unsettling part, she said, was that she couldn't tell if the memory was trying to come from the photo, or if the photo itself was somehow coming from a memory she never actually had. His sister, Laura, who had initially joked about the whole thing, calling it a funny mystery or a weird prank, also stopped talking about it. The jokes ended. She started avoiding the topic altogether. When Daniel finally pressed her on why she'd become so quiet, her answer was simple but chilling. If it's an error, she said, it should feel like one. It should feel wrong or fake. But it doesn't. Daniel asked her what it felt like instead. Laura took a moment, staring into the distance, as if trying to capture a fleeting thought. It feels, she said, like something happened and no one noticed. It was as if a significant event had occurred, a shift in reality. But it was so seamless that it slipped by everyone's attention, leaving only these strange photographic artifacts as evidence. In the end, the family never found an explanation. There was no scientific anomaly they could point to, no newly discovered psychological phenomenon, no official correction issued by the city archives. The photos of Riverton Heights simply remain. They sit in the old family album, tucked between pictures of birthdays and holidays. The images themselves do not change. They are frozen in time, showing a happy family on a sunny day in a town that wasn't there. But the way the family looks at them has changed forever. The town of Riverton Heights exists now, a real and tangible place. It didn't exist then. And yet, the photos prove that on a day in the 1990s, someone stood there, on that very street, in front of that very house, smiling for a camera, as if the town already did. Thanks for watching. If you have any theories about what might have happened, leave them in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more mysteries like this one.